What's up, techies? I want to talk about the LG G5. This is going to be my overall review about this phone. I want to go over what I like and what I don't like about it, maybe who this could be a good setup for, but just to get to the point, this phone just isn't for me. Before I get into what I like, let's go ahead and just knock out what I don't like about this phone, kind of get that stuff out of the way, then we'll talk about what I do like about this phone. The first thing I want to talk about that I don't like about this phone is the UI. I don't like the skin that LG puts over their phones, and I know that you can put on custom launcher like Nova Launcher, and you can kind of get some different icons and so forth. The part that bugs me is actually the skin that you see throughout the system, like the system apps and so forth. The notification shade, notifications look fine, like those look like pretty much like anywhere except if you just really get into the depths of customizing those, but you can't do that with this phone. Which points me back to this, is like this notification shade here, the status bar, all the different custom shortcuts and whatnot. I just don't like that little green. I'm not a big fan of it. The white background is okay, but just the icons themselves, they're just not my favorite. Now, this is definitely a personal preference of mine, but my point is that you can't change it. Looking at a non-rooted phone on a Samsung device like this Note 5 here, or if you get the Galaxy S7 or 7 Edge, those kind of phones, you can actually go to the settings, go to the themes, and you can change up the whole theme. Now, I have an Android N theme on my Note 5 here, so it looks like a stock Android. That's the kind of design that I like. I like the dark background with how the icons look. I like what that looks like. A stock Android theme is what I like the most out of most of my device experiences. There's a ton of themes that you could choose from at the Samsung theme store. Now, if you have something like a Nexus device or any device that you can throw in custom ROMs, there's tons of themes that way too. My point is that I like having more options, and even a Samsung device gives you more options in the themes department. The only thing that you could change around as far as the UI goes is the launcher and the icons. That's about it. Well, of course, a wallpaper. That's definitely the first thing I don't like about the G5. The next thing I don't like about this phone is the build quality. Now, granted that this is actually a metal body, it just doesn't feel like it. It feels like it's plastic. It feels very cheap. This is actually a review unit that was sent to me, and this is how it was sent. This is not done by Josh Bain. This was done by whoever had this device before, but as you can see here, it does get pretty marked up. I'm not sure how it was done, but it looks like it ate up some concrete. There's even a couple blemishes right here, and there's a few blemishes on the screen that's really hard just to see on camera. I will give props to LG that the actual screen didn't break or anything like that, even though it was dropped on the corner, which a lot of drops do happen on corners, and it's really a surprise to me that it didn't really bend the frame or anything like that, so it did survive some sort of drop. Either way, it's really cheap and it's going to mark up really easy. There's another tech YouTuber out there, Jerry Rig, and he did a pretty bad torture test to the phone, and you can see that the paint just scrapes away. So this phone, you're definitely going to have to put a case or skin on it to protect it from getting marked up. But overall, it just feels cheap. It doesn't feel like you got a premium device in your hand. Another issue that I found with this device is that I don't really like the front-facing camera. One, it actually isn't as easy to switch over to the front-facing camera as other devices. What they should do is have a toggle next to the shutter button. Instead, you gotta come up here and find the twist around, or whatever you want to call it. The front-facing camera just, it hasn't really lived up to some of the other devices that I've used, especially in low light. Like, I'm in good light right now and it just doesn't work that well. This is a video that me and a buddy were starting to record. I started to use this phone with the front-facing camera, and I just didn't like the quality that was coming out. It had a lot of noisy kind of background to it. It just wasn't that great. So I had to switch it around and just use the rear-facing camera. I mean, which was fine, it worked that way. But I've used other devices with the front-facing camera and the video quality was a lot better. Another thing I don't care about this phone is the speaker placement. It's got the single speaker down here, and after you use a phone that has front-facing speakers, you just really get used to that and you realize what kind of quality that comes from those. To me, they would have been better off to use this area right here as a speaker grill instead of placing it down here at the bottom. That is a personal preference thing, and I realize that, but it's something I do want to bring up. There's times where I'm using my phone one-handed because I got the other hand holding something else, or like I have one of my kids in my hand, we're watching a video, watching a YouTube video or something like that, and you have to be a lot more cognitive of where the speaker is placed because it could easily cover it up. Even while gaming, if just depending on how you hold your phone, you might block the speaker if you're just trying to use your speakers to play the game. Now, I know you can hook up a Bluetooth device or even use your headphones, whatever, but sometimes I just like to use the audio that's coming from the phone, not something from headphones. As I said, this is definitely a preference thing, but it is something I would like to point out. As far as the sound quality goes, it's okay. It's not the best. Another issue that I have with this phone is actually the microphone quality. It is not good. It does not record good audio. I do the video announcements at church, and I use my phone as a voiceover just because it's just super simple and easy for each weekly video that I do. So just to hear it, I'm going to put the phone ups to the microphone so that we can hear what it sounds like. It's very tingy, it just does not have good quality to me. Experience First Wednesday worship like never before. Be sure to show up on Wednesday to see what kind of changes are taking place. You won't want to miss it. Now that audio is coming from the phone itself, which kind of gives you an example of what the audio quality is like coming out from the phone. But once I got over to my video editing software, it just did not sound good at all. I actually had to just use my iPhone, my work phone that was next to me, to re-record that part. Looking at any Samsung device that's come out in the last 2 to 3 years, I've had no issues at all as far as the audio recording quality. It's been really good. And this was actually recorded just a day or so ago, so I'm going to let you hear what that sounds like. Here tonight at the church is Growth Track 201. This is your chance to find out what our core beliefs are and our values. Now, I'm not saying that the Note 5 here has the best audio quality coming out of the phone, but when you get over to editing software, it sounds really good. I hardly ever have to clean up the audio using a Samsung device's audio recording. Now granted, not everybody's going to use the phone to record voiceovers for video announcements for their church, but that's how I use the phone, and it's definitely a point that I look for when I'm looking for a phone or the experience that I'm looking from the audio. The last few years, LG has released phones with buttons on the very back. For example, the G3 and 4 had their volume rockers next to the power button. This time they moved it onto the side, and I don't like that button placement at all. I'd rather have the power button with the volume rocker. To me, it just felt a lot better when they had those buttons on the back, versus when you're just trying to look for the volume rockers and stuff like that, you gotta find it over here, and it's like really smooth, so it's not the easiest to find. So if you're not familiar with your phone, which you would get familiar with it over some time, but I just liked it better on the back. Another thing I want to point out is the phone app. I use my favorites option all the time on other phones and it's not there. That's just crazy to me. Like, it needs to have a favorite spot for your contacts. Now you can create a group or something, but still, it's not as easy. Like if you come over here to my Note 5, you got recent, favorite, and contacts. I use my favorites. That's how I'd most of the time use a phone call, because I'm using those phone numbers most of the time. Even an iPhone has a favorite section, so that's just a must-have in the dialer app. The last thing I want to touch on about what I don't like about this phone is the screen. Now it's fine indoors. If you're going to take the phone outdoors though, don't expect to see it very clearly. I actually used this phone with Pokemon Go and I had the full brightness all the way up, and it was just really difficult to see that screen. So it's just a minor thing that I want to point out. It might not be something that affects you, but I like to be outdoors and I use my phone outside, and I like to be able to see my screen. So that pretty much covers what I don't like about the phone. Let's go over what I do like about it. One of the things that LG has done really well in the last few years is actually their camera. They've got a good camera and it works pretty well from what I've experienced so far. Something that I would like them to do as far as a shortcut though is other phones you can double tap the power button, you can do a twisting kind of action like on Motorola devices. There's no shortcut other than double knocking the screen and then flipping up from the lock screen. That's your shortcut, that's all you get. And the other thing I don't like about the app is that it doesn't flow well with those on-screen buttons. Let me show you what I mean. You got your on-screen buttons here, and any other device that has on-screen buttons, you still have those present. You just flip up or whatever. But when you're in the camera, you got to use this back button over here, and it's not always the easiest to find when you're kind of in a hurry or if you're just trying to get out of the app. You know, sometimes you just want to hit the home button, but there's no home button to press at all. You have to press that button to get out of the camera app. That's kind of besides the point. I guess it kind of should have gone into what I don't like about the phone section, but the camera itself, the app, it's good. It's got a lot of nice controls. It takes really good pictures, it takes good video as far as the rear shooter goes, and you're going to be able to get some pretty good quality out of it. Like some of the things I like to do with photos is to kind of get that little bokeh effect or the blur background. You focus on something close and then you got that blurry image in the back. It just looks really cool. And it focuses relatively quick. Then you get a pretty cool looking photo. It does have that laser focus, which LG was one of the first ones to actually introduce that to a phone, which they still put that with the G5. Now if you notice back here, it's got two different cameras. That's because one of them is a wide angle. The wide angle is pretty interesting. I'd say it's better for the shots that are outdoors, you're trying to get a big landscape. You just switch it over and now you can see how much more area that you can cover. And it toggles back and forth, you know, relatively quick. It's not the smoothest transition, but it's pretty good. So it's kind of like one of those GoPro kind of angles. On the sides here, you're going to notice that straight images are actually kind of bent Other good things about this camera app is that you get a shortcut for sharing your photos and videos, which is pretty neat. I like being able to have shortcuts to share things because I do use social media quite often. Other options, you get simple, auto, and manual. So you do have some manual controls, which is great if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of what the camera can do. Normally, I just kind of keep mine in auto. You get your flash on and off in auto. We already covered what this is, which is the toggle between the front and rear facing cameras. You get different modes you can choose from, which is pop-out, multi-view, sharp, panorama, slow-mo, and time-lapse. Other settings, you can choose your ratios, your resolutions, HDR on or off. You get some different film effects, voice commands. You get OIS or steady shot, and it kind of gives you some reasons why you would use one over the other. It's best to use steady shot for your video and use OIS for your photos. Best thing to do is just kind of toggle on which one that you're going to be using the most at that time. Then you got a grid kind of scale that you can look at as well. So overall, the camera app is really good. It's got a lot of options. It's got everything I want out of a camera app, and it has good quality as far as what the picture looks like. Audio-wise, it's not the best, as I pointed out before. The other thing I like about this phone is the fingerprint sensor. It's really sensitive, it works really well. Most of the time it's rather accurate as soon as I put it on there, and it doesn't even really have to rest fully onto it 100%, and it still works fine, so it's really good, it functions well. Using the Nexus 6P, I really got used to using that back area. Anytime that you go into another phone that doesn't have it on the back, you end up reaching for it. It's a really good spot for it, but as far as the placement goes, it's really good there, and it works well to unlock the phone. So there's definitely no complaints about the fingerprint sensor and how it works and where it's placed. Another thing that LG is keeping is removable batteries. Now it's a little different method than what we've seen before. It's kind of in a modular design. You have to press this button here, and you kind of have to press it just right, and it gets you to start to release it, and you can see it kind of crack open, and then you can take it on out. Like I said, this is part of a modular design. You can get different mods that includes like a camera mod and things like that. The issue that I have with that though is that you have to remove that whole battery. You can't attach the mod without removing the battery, so you got to turn your phone all the way off, then boot it back up just to use those mods. Now if you're just changing out a battery, that's kind of the purpose of having a removable battery, to replace another one. So it just kind of goes in just like that, clicks together, and you're good to go. But again, if you're using another mod, you got to boot the phone all the way back up. Another thing that LG has kept going strong is SD card support. And you got your little port over here, and it's going to be right next to your SIM card. So it's nice that you don't have to like remove the battery for that part. You can actually swap it on out just over here on the side. The last thing I want to mention is that the phone is actually a decent size. It's not too small and it's not too big, so if you're looking for a phone that's not ginormous or a phone that's just too small, this is a nice happy medium. I think it's a 5.3 inch screen. It's got 2K resolution. Now, I'm a guy that likes the bigger phones, and I don't feel like I'm using a phone that's too small, so that's a really good thing in my opinion. Well, that pretty much covers what I want to talk about with what I do and what I don't like about this phone. I just don't know what to think about it. There's a lot of good strengths, but there's also some really bad weaknesses in my opinion, so it really, with those weaknesses that are listed off, it's kind of like deal breakers to me when I'm looking at phones. There's just better options in my opinion. However, this might be something for you, and if it is, let me know down in the comments. If you ended up getting the G5, let me know what's your experience been like. I want to know what you guys think about this phone as well. If you are interested in getting this phone, I'll leave links down below in the description. You can get it for a pretty good price at this point. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any more reviews like this, along with giveaways and other how-to guides and so forth. Also follow me on the social networks. I post to Twitter and Instagram all the time. And until then, stay techy.